Okay. Good morning, podcast community. Well, we have somebody special in the studio. I'm even mic'd for the first time ever. So this is really a treat. We were thinking about putting her on the Technology Matters podcast, but now we're going to put her on Kennesaw Happenings because everybody knows Kristina if they live in Kennesaw. So why don't you introduce yourself for the one or two people that don't know who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Okay, that's hilarious because my kids say everywhere we go, you know somebody.
Yeah.
And it's true. You know, once you get connected in Kennesaw,
Yes.
That's how it happens. So my name's Kristina. People call me Kristina with a K. I'm a professional realtor. I've lived in Kennesaw for 13 years and I got my real estate license 9 years ago. Do you want a little bit more background than that? Or
Yeah, because I want to really dig into, like, how did you get into real estate? What was like the connection? Why did you want to go that path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an Army brat. I'm the daughter of an Army officer and a spunky entrepreneur. And throughout my entire life, one of the things that my entrepreneurial family would do is buy fixer-uppers. So we moved from town to town and my parents would buy a house that was nearly uninhabitable. We'd move into it, fix it up over 3 years, sell it, and then buy our next property. And so the last fixer-upper that we lived in, I was 14 and my little brother was 12. And seriously, this house was awful. It was so disgusting. And my parents put my little brother and me into the living room with our furniture, outlining our bedrooms and some folded down boxes so that we had just a little bit of privacy. Could you imagine as a preteen living through this, my little brother, me about to kill him every time I turned around because I was a teenager, right?
Right, sure.
And I needed some privacy.
And he's harassing his big sister all the time.
Of course. My 3 older brothers were in college. So that is something unique about me as I do have 4 brothers. We've moved around a lot and it's made me tough. That's why I can hang with the best of them. But we, that sacrifice, that vision that my parents had was so incredible because 2 years later, I lived in the coolest house that any of my friends had ever seen on 3.5 acres in Gainesville, Florida. And that that vision that my family always had everywhere we went to make things just, you know, as a family, we built it together. And fast forward several years, my parents did a few more flips and fixer-uppers, lived in them while they did it. And then they traveled the country for 2 years. They were nomads in an RV for 2 years. And they decided that Asheville, North Carolina was the place that they wanted to settle. It was the height of the real estate boom in the early 2000s. And they both finally got their real estate licenses. My mom was quickly a top producer in Asheville, North Carolina. And that's when it went from, okay, this is a family project to this is a real business. And in 2007, I jumped the corporate ship and bought my former husband and I bought our first business down in Florida. And that's when I realized I need to work for myself. You know, you put in what you get out, and I'm not clocking in for anyone but myself and my clients. I'm clocking in for my clients. But watching my mom become so successful, and she was, I guess, in her late 50s when she started her professional real estate career, that was a huge inspiration. So I always knew that that was the next place I was going to go. But I had been doing businesses with my ex-husband. And when my youngest was 1, I decided to get my real estate license. A friend of mine and I went through the program together and I'd put him down for his nap and I'd study. And then my then husband would get home from work and we'd go to class at night. And so it was a great tag team for me to get to where I needed to be to have my own business that wasn't a partnership with him. And took off running, you know, it just...
I you know, I didn't know I knew the military part. And so when I was putting a description, I said, you know, you have to learn how to connect if you grow up in a military environment and you better be flexible because you're moving to different towns. And here we're talking about fixer-uppers. And when you think about a fixer-upper, if you start out, you got to fix it up. So it's not really that nice. So when you're kind of thinking back then, were you like not liking it because it was very different than other people? Or were you capturing like, this is cool in a sense that because everything is like I'm not going to say normal, but you had to adapt. So what were you thinking at 14 that other kids have a regular house, they got regular stuff, and you're like boxing off your broom and all?
Yeah.
What were you kind of like?
So you know what
about?
was so cool is that, and I wish I had found the pictures because I had meant to find them before that big event that I talked about this, but I got to have house parties where it didn't matter if it was messy because we were in the middle of construction. And so I hosted my birthday party. I hosted end of year parties. At 14 years old, I'm throwing these huge events because at our house, you could sit on anything. People had their feet hanging from the loft, right? You know? And so it was really fun. I remember not being happy for having to share that space with my brother.
Right.
That was a hard time. But being a military family, you stick together. And so no matter where you go, there you are, is what my mom would say. You bring you with you and you have your tribe of people, which is your family. So no matter what, we always had our family. And so we'd move somewhere and we were all really, really tight. And then we made friends and we start fighting again.
Right.
But I got to live the most monumental one was the one when I was a teenager and we had bought the property next to my grandparents. So every memory I have is really positive because I have my grandparents next door. I could run over to their house and have like some privacy, maybe.
Yeah.
Sit down with my grandmother and hang out with her. That my older brothers didn't get that because they moved around their whole life. My dad retired when I was 12. So I got to live with my grandparents for a little bit before we did our next venture. So in the moment, the hormones, you want privacy. You don't want to be with your little brother all the time.
Sure.
But all the memories are amazing. Like I our good friend Alicia Tedisco, she jokes about if you see a hammer in my hand, you better run because she runs a handyman service, but she's not the handyman. I installed fans. I did flooring.
Yeah.
I did all this stuff alongside my parents. And so I actually have that handy-ish skill, which is something that most kids would never have the opportunity to do nowadays because we hire everything out.
Yes. I had a lady on and we were talking about her mindset was she didn't play with Barbies. She played with Legos. And so she's like constructs things. She thinks of solving problems. So let's go back for just a little bit. Were you playing with, like, as a girl growing up, did you go the traditional route with Barbies or were you the unconditional route with G.I. Joes?
Yeah, so being the only girl in the family, everybody gave me dolls. And what we did was we set them up and shot them.
I love it.
With our G.I. Joes. We were outside all the time. So we were just being creative, making stuff. That was that's still my happy place, is to be outside. So we would take those Barbies and, set them in the trees. My brother would shoot them. And so
that is so cool.
That's a fun question. Thank you.
Yeah. That, because we always know when we go back a few years when we're growing up, we can kind of see some of the things that happened when we were just in kindergarten, and we're doing something similar, but we're just bigger. We're just older,
Right.
So what, for our people that are listening, that are business owners, what did flexibility and just dealing with different environments, how did that prepare you to run your own real estate company and to be able to be successful in that?
I have always been the connector, and it's probably some of it was born in me and some of it is environmental, but I've always been the connector, and that's what I'm known as no matter where I go. It's like, hey, Pete, who do you need to meet today?
Yeah.
Who can I introduce you to? And so I was naturally drawn into sales and marketing because of my personality. And I've got I went to Florida State University, got out of Gainesville, Florida,
Yeah.
went to college at Florida State. I got a marketing degree, marketing, advertising, communications with a minor in psychology. So I went right into the business world working for Infinite Energy, a pretty large natural gas company that sold to Gas South 2 years ago. But the whole thing was getting to know people so that you can help them reach their goals, not just coming in and trying to solve problems all the time, but reach their goals. So in residential real estate, that's why I place myself into these business settings, because I work so well with other professionals.
Gotcha.
It's goal oriented. Everything's emotional. I've worked with the toughest people, toughest men, smartest women who their house is their emotion, right? So let's turn this into a product and talk about our goals, because even though there's a lot of memories in this house, we can take pictures of the memories and keep them warm in our heart and move on, because hey, what's our goal here? Do we want to make a ton of money? Usually that's what we want to do so that we can move to the next space in our life. Are we upsizing, downsizing? Are you moving because of work? Are you moving because it's time to retire? So getting to know people's goals and working alongside them, that's the way it's done. And helping them manage the emotion that goes along with it is vitally important. I think a lot of professionals think that there's not going to be emotion around their house, and there typically is. So we manage that and always come back to what are our goals? Black and red. Right. Where do we want to be? Are we going to make money on this house? We're going to lose money on this house. Let's be real about it. If we're going to lose money on the house, we just all need to be real about it. Hasn't happened in a long time that someone's losing money on their house. But it's all about decision making and being clear, setting expectations, and again, having goals.
I love that. What do you now with your girlfriends and you're talking? You grew up with brothers, okay? So you didn't have a sister that you could like do sister stuff with. Do you think growing up with boys shaped you in a way that you could share with our viewers? Like, was that like you had to be tough, you had to stick up for yourself, and that's helped you in your career?
So apparently I came out of the womb like this, telling everybody what to do.
Okay, really?
And I was in charge. So I was just born this way.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have to do, or I've been doing over the last 20 years, is figuring out how to not take things over, not to always be in charge, because leadership is about delegation. So that's something that's learned over the years versus the opposite, where a lot of people have to learn leadership.
Yes.
Growing up with boys makes me think a little differently. I feel people's emotions, and that comes from my dad, which is interesting. The Army officer who feels people's emotions in a way, the same way that I do. So I think having so many brothers helps really open my mind to the fact that men and women, we have traditional roles and strengths, but we're all kind of the same. I know lots of women who are emotionless, who are very, very, would have that male, you would think a male brain, but because they're a woman, they're stereotyped, and vice versa. I've got 3 sons actually and 2 stepdaughters. So my sons have always been, it's okay if they cry. It's okay if they're hurting, and we embrace it and move on. Definitely having brothers, we're all leaders. So who do I lean on for different things? Who can I learn from? And who being the little sister, I just have one little brother. A lot of times they forget that I'm 46 years old. I'm not a baby anymore, but that's coming with the growth of our relationships. Yeah. I do think that it puts me in a unique position having all brothers.
Yeah. I think like, you don't get cut any slack when you have brothers.
No.
So yeah, and that really toughens you to the point, I think, just generally making statements, not for sure, but it does, because, if you have a sister, you go, hey, you're talking to your sister, they're picking on me. And then you have somebody else to come fight your battle with, but you had to fight your battles by yourself.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you could, have anybody to stick up for you. What do you think? Do you think growing up in a military with military dad, mom, and all. Did that help you in the way of really connecting? I mean, I know you came out, like you said, being able to fend for yourself. But as a connector, when did you feel that you had that superpower? Was that later, or what stage of your career did you kind of like, you know what, I'm pretty good at this?
Yeah, it probably evolved in high school. I think the
Okay.
hardest transition for me was coming from always being around other military kids to going to Gainesville, Florida, where everybody knew each other since they were in diapers, and breaking into that. That was a tough time because I was different. I was the new kid. And in a second, we can transition as into a little something else. But I was the new kid, and middle school was probably, for me, it was a lot more fun than high school. I really enjoyed it, but it was the first time in my life where people weren't in the same situation as me. And so that's when it was like, okay, how am I going to make friends? How do I project who I want them to see? I remember crying one day after school because it was so hard. And my mom, tough love, was just like, what are you doing to make this happen? You know, because we're all in charge of our own destiny.
Yes.
We are in charge of our attitudes. We are the ones responsible for what comes into our lives. That's a tough message when you're a little kid.
Right.
And it was a new message for me at that time. And I teach this to all my 5 children, that we are responsible only for ourselves, and what we put out into the universe, we bring back to us. So that conversation happened in my grandparents' house. I was bawling and I was so mad because I wasn't being consoled.
Right.
And so that I learned too, that there's a time to console someone and there's a time for tough love. And at that moment, it sticks with me because I needed to be consoled and I wasn't, but the lesson was there. And so what am I in charge of and how can I control it? So by the time I got to high school, that's when I really started digging into clubs, leadership, getting people involved, connecting people. And by the time I went to college, it just was natural for me to go into the industry I was going into. I thought I'd be a psychologist, but I couldn't imagine sitting and listening to people's problems all the time.
Oh yeah, that would be like, that's tough.
That's tough.
I have a person that does that, and you know, he plays golf with me, but when people are pouring into you that kind of heavy stuff, I don't know how people balance that out, because you're constantly hearing of the troubles of an individual.
Right.
Yeah. So good switch there.
Yeah.
You would probably not be the person that you are today.
And I definitely wouldn't, I might not still be doing that. You know, I probably would have transitioned out of it very quickly, because while I enjoy helping people, doing that as a job full time, 8-10 hours a day it's draining.
Sure.
Very draining.
Now you serve in like a lot of different roles. Now you have an event coming up the first part of May.
Well, it's June 6th.
Oh, June 6th. Okay.
So let's rewind back to why we were in Gainesville, Florida. So my dad retired from the Army after 25 years of service, and he thought he was an Army Ranger. My dad is a badass. And he was an Army Ranger, and he went to Vietnam, and he not just went to Vietnam, he toured twice as a leader. And when he retired from the Army, he thought he had a job in North Carolina. So my parents always wanted to live in North Carolina. He thought he had a job there. And so he finished out his career at Fort Gordon, and the rest of us moved to Gainesville, Florida to stay with my grandparents for a little while the transition was happening. The job fell through. So my dad ended up moving in with us and my grandparents. And what do you do next after you've got the Army War College, you've got your master's degree, you've got all this. These military officers and especially special operators have such an immense amount of education, and the skill set is insane. But how do they talk to the general public and the civilian people about that skill set to earn the kind of money that they deserve? So that's where my dad was. And what did he do? He went to accounting school at University of Florida. That's what his solution was. Let me go back to college and earn another degree. And he ended up working at the University of Florida vet school and then in the business department at University of Florida. And great. But he could have done a lot more with what he had under his belt. So fast forward to like 2020. Okay, 2020. Right. In 2020, I met my partner, Tommy Stoner, and he is retired Special Forces. Wow. U.S. Army, 29 years. And what brought him to Atlanta was that he went through, when he was retiring in 2016, he went through this program called the Special Operators Transition Foundation. Special Operators Transition Foundation helps military special operators transition into high-level civilian positions in the city that they want to live in. The program is a minimum of 12 months. So when you're ready to transition, that's when you reach out to SOTF, SOTF.org. You reach out to SOTF and say, I'm transitioning. I want to be in this program. The only qualification to be in the Special Operators Transition Foundation in their program is that you were a special operator. You've already been qualified for the fact that you made it into the top, 0.5% of all of our military actually qualifies for this program. And so you're qualified. It's a matter of your transition time and where do you want to live. And so Tommy, when I met him, he had transitioned. He was part of the SunTrust team before I met him when he moved to Atlanta on the IT side, helping with the SunTrust BB&T merger.
Gotcha.
He's not an IT guy, strategy and risk consulting. So that's how SOTF helps people to explain, I'm stuttering myself, but to explain how their skill set in the military as a special operator transitions them into these high level positions. That's how it does it. And so I've been able to be a part of this program for 4 years now, for 3 of those 4 years as the CEO's girlfriend. And so Tommy ran that organization when I met him. He was the CEO of SOTF. And I showed up to the first event in Nashville, first event for me in Nashville, Tennessee. And I had no idea what it was all about. No clue, except for what it did for him. And this event in Nashville is a golf tournament. Actually, every event starts with a full day workshop for the fellows who are transitioning to that area. So it's not for every fellow in the country, but those who want to live in that area. So the workshop, they bring in hiring partners from that city and surrounding areas to present, mingle, and do career building things with the fellows during that full day workshop. And then there's typically a networking happy hour, and the next day will be the fundraiser. And in Atlanta, we've done, this will be my 4th year as a, kind of a sidekick part of it. But Tommy transitioned back to Truist about 15 months ago, again, working for the CIO of Truist on the risk and strategy side of it. And we decided to join the Atlanta task force for the SOTF event here in the greater Atlanta area. Traditionally, it's been in the city of Atlanta.
Dang. I mean, so let me ask a question about Tommy. Because my friend, he was all through FBI, special SWAT, all this. And he ended up working in cybersecurity for the Bank of America.
There you go.
And it's kind of like they have this skill set that they can recognize things that the average person would just go right over their head. So working in that position, was he kind of geeky or was he more connector with that special? I mean, when I say geeky, I don't mean, I just mean technology kind of guy.
No.
Okay.
No.
So he is thrown in a role, because this was my problem. This was what my friend said. He's used to chasing down Eric Rudolph in the mountains of North Carolina. Now he's sitting behind a computer. And it's like, that doesn't work. Because does he struggle with the technology cyber part and the part of the role that he has with a ranger and just his training in the military is like action. I mean, they love action. They love
right.
So what is that like? What
you
does
got to
he
find
say?
your adrenaline elsewhere.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that is a big thing. And so we have an airplane.
What?
Yes. We
No way.
have a Grumman Tiger.
Yeah.
Single engine Grumman Tiger. And so that there's got to be outlets besides work.
Okay.
So when work used to be your adrenaline, he's jumped from an airplane thousands of times. That you can't get your adrenaline from work unless your successes are your adrenaline, right? But it's very different. I absolutely agree with you. Sitting behind the computer and working all day long is very different, but he's still using his brain like he always has. Right. So using his brain to create strategy for success. And I think the difference with these special operators versus us civilians is that they're looking at the long game. How is this going to play out? Yes. Okay. So I've had the pleasure of listening to Rob O'Neill speak a few times. Yeah. He's the one who shot Osama bin Laden, and he's actually one of the founding board members of the Special Operators Transition Foundation. And what he said is they prepared for that strike. Yeah. With every possible scenario that could have happened. Yes. Not the best possible scenario. Here's what we want to happen, but every possible scenario over and over and over in order to make a successful mission. Most of us are looking like, hey, here's start, here's end. I want to get from the start to the end. What's the most efficient way I'm going to do it? Yet the special operator is thinking, okay, what if it goes off track here? How are we going to still be successful? And what if we're this far and it goes this way? How are we going to be successful? So their brain does work differently in solving problems. Right. Because they've been put in life or death situations. Imagine being in a boardroom and someone acts like it's the end of the world because something just blew up at the bank. It didn't blow up physically. It blew up on paper. Right. So their ability to stay calm in the midst of what is seemingly the worst thing that can happen is just fabulous. It's amazing. So these are a unique skill set of people, and getting them to be able, it's cute because at the beginning of the workshop, they'll stand up and introduce themselves, and it's like 15 acronyms behind their name. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. By the end of the day, they've been coached so well that they can say, they can explain it in a different way that our ears understand it. But like I said, it's a year-long program. So it's not just a one-day workshop. Right. There's a coach involved who helps them throughout the process. One of the hardest things with transition is losing your team and your brotherhood. Yes. And so SOTF helps keep that together for them, the support that you need throughout the transition process.
That is awesome. I've had numerous conversations with my friend, and, he still now does investigation. And so he got a call when I was up there in Richmond, and he said, I got to go down this. And it was like a boring type thing where you're just observing, but he's on his Harley riding across the country and with his wife. So they have that adrenaline stuff, which I totally agree. You have to find your adrenaline. Yeah. I mean, that's critical to anything, but it's more critical to when you're used to it as a career, and then all of a sudden it's removed from you, you got to replace it. Like buy a plane or something.
Buy a plane. Yeah, we got a motorcycle too.
Did you really? Oh my God.
He had the motorcycle before I met him, but it's an absolutely beautiful BMW. Okay. And then the airplane came, after we had been together for a little bit. And he loves to fish too. So it's not 24 hours a day.
No, it can't be, but I'm sure the fishing is that thinking time, that you're still doing something. I was never a fisherman. But my golfers, when they wanted to take a break, they were fishermen because they're always thinking on the golf course, and you have to always balance out that whatever you're doing, you have to give your brain a break occasionally to recharge the batteries. So with June the 6th is coming up, what could our viewers help you with? Like, what would be needed for you to ask them
Sure,
we
to
can
make
make
this
it a big-
successful.
yeah.
So let me break it down for you. We're going to have this event on June the 6th at Governor's Gun Club in Kennesaw. So
Okay.
this is a first time that we're coming out of the city of Atlanta. We're taking a chance on Kennesaw, but I do believe it's a destination event. The big piece that I need 300 of my closest friends to buy tickets to the War Hippies concert. That's on June the 6th. It's doors open at 7. Band starts at 7:30. It's a $50 ticket. It's tax deductible. It's going to be an amazing show. The War Hippies play all over the country. They played with Charlie Daniels, Randy Travis, and it's a phenomenal band. It's going to be in that big, where the big part of Governor's Gun Club. So that's sort of our huge event that everybody can be a part of and be just enjoy it and support the organization. The day looks like this. At 2:00, we have a Get Your Lead Out event. The special operators, the fellows who are in the program, we only have 15 seats for this, not seats, but 15, spots for this. Okay. So it's called Get Your Lead Out. It starts at Governor's Gun Club at 2:00. And you partner up with a special operator, and you're going to go through the different ranges. We've got 3 ranges at Governor's Gun Club. Okay. And so you get to partner with a special operator and shoot with them for the day. And then when the shooting portion is over at 4:00, these 15 Get Your Lead Out people with the special operators are going to have an intimate conversation with George Pirro. George Pirro is the person who interrogated Saddam Hussein. He was the lead interrogator for Saddam Hussein. So this is an intimate setting with George Pirro to hear about his experience and what he went and did with Saddam Hussein.
Dang.
Hopefully, if the weather's good, it'll be on the patio at Governor's Gun Club. That'll be an amazing experience. If not, we'll find a nice little intimate spot in the club.
Yes.
And then at 6:00 is the VIP portion of the concert. And those tickets are $150. And you get heavy appetizers provided by the catering arm of South City Kitchen. If you haven't been there, most of us know South City. It's amazing. Awesome. Yep. Chris, the owner of that restaurant, has hosted our after hours typically down at King Plow. He's got a big event center there. So they're bringing in heavy appetizers and an open bar for our VIP to hang out with George Pirro, the special operators, and all of our sponsors of the event. Yeah. And then back to the big concert. Doors open at 7. And
dang, that's just so cool. Well, what we'd love to have you back on our entertainment one. Sure. We have a veterans podcast. So I can think of about 4 other ones, but we'll leave it at those 2. And then because those are the kind of things that really make a memory for people, because when you're able to get that close to somebody that has served and has done so much in their life, and you can be alongside them and hang out with them for a day, that, it's just a matter of you have to experience to appreciate it. So why don't we do this? When you come back on my next on a couple more, I'm going to go to your banner of how people can get a hold of you. There we go. Oh, tell our people how they can contact you. Then we'll bring you back and we'll talk about SODIF.
And that's a play on SOFT, which is our special operators community, is the SOFT community, but so the acronym is purposeful. SODIF, Special Operators Transition Foundation, SOTF.org/events. The tickets aren't live yet, but they're going to be live probably by the end of the weekend. Okay. So I really, and please come and say hi to me. Like, if you saw me here with Pete, the best thing you could do is come and give me a high five and let me know that you saw this. I am all over social media. You can see that my name is spelled a little differently, but Kristina with a K, Bouterse, Bouterse. You can connect with me personally, but also loveyourplacegeorgia.com. It's I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I kind of gave up on TikTok.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do.
I'm there, but it's all old.
Yeah.
But Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you can find me at Love Your Place, Georgia. And I'm probably 10 pages deep on the internet if you want to know more about me.
Well, we're going to put you on the first page here real soon because I just had some ideas that we'll put in play. But if you will take advantage of the $150 offer to really get closer to it, we'll put you on our podcast as a guest.
Oh,
so we're going to throw and when you're on PodcastPete podcast, you're not a well-kept secret anymore.
You know what? Here's something special too, is that everybody has a story.
Yes. Oh,
it's about
totally.
taking the time to learn it. Everybody has a story, and your story is just as special as mine. And I'd love to meet you and see you at the event.
Oh, yes. Okay. So share this with people that you know need to know about this event. So just hit the share button, let them hear about the event. And then if you want to call Kristina, here's her number right up here, 678-451-5548. We're going to give one other plug before we end up because we know you have an appointment you have to get to. So for those of you that like to laugh, we have Ken Kington going to be the featured comedian with Melissa, who Kristina knows from their school. This lady she just is always ready with those funny lines. I mean, you see her her brain working. She's ready to hit with a one-liner. But Ken has been doing it for about 30 years. So May the 22nd, Wednesday night at Grace Church, we're going to bring the adult children together to take a date with their mom and dad. Come out and laugh, come out and have some fun. 6:30, 7:30 you'll be home and you'll be in bed by 8:30. So we want to respect our seniors because we know that early to bed, early to rise type thing. So thank you, Kristina. What would be the one thing that you want our viewers to take home with them from this podcast with you?
Let's have some patience and support for our military veterans and dig in deeper as to what their why is and where they want to go next, so we can support everybody. Absolutely. Because they're making a choice that most of us, it's not even like we made the choice, it didn't even cross our minds, right? Yes. So let's do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you making it through the traffic here at Kennesaw to come to the global studio.
Global studios.
Global. Yeah, we went global this morning. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristina. We appreciate you being our guest.